Have you ever caught your reflection in a store window? Not a mirror, just a fleeting glance, and felt something was off? Not because of a wrinkle or gray hair, but because the woman looking back didn't quite feel like you? I think we've all been there, when the makeup felt a bit too much, or the earrings didn't sit right with the mood. It's not about looking bad, it's about looking like we're trying too hard to be someone we're not. And that's exhausting, isn't it? A few weeks ago, I was at my local library in Portland. Our tiny Saturday book club had just wrapped up. One of the ladies, Janine, lovely woman in her early 70s, leaned over and whispered to me, "I don't know what's happened lately. I dress like they say online, but somehow I feel less like myself." She wasn't sad, just puzzled, as if she had followed all the right rules but lost the music in the process. I looked at her soft lavender nails, her glossy lips, and the stiff sculpted brows, and suddenly I saw it too. She was hidden behind a look that didn't belong to her. That moment stayed with me. Because elegance, true elegance, isn't about being perfect. It's about feeling peacefully yourself in what you wear, in how you show up. So today, let's take a gentle walk through 10 little habits, quiet, unnoticed ones, that might be chipping away at your natural presence. And the best part? They're not hard to change. In fact, just by noticing them, you begin coming home to yourself again. Let's begin, right where so many well-meaning women go too far, the lashes. She looked perfect on paper. Neat blazer, tasteful scarf, hair just so. But when she smiled at me across the cafe table, I couldn't read her eyes. There was something in the way the lashes sat, too thick, too long, too heavy. I felt like I was trying to connect through a curtain, and I remember thinking, what a shame. I bet her gaze used to feel like sunlight. The truth is, many of us fall into the same habit. We add, we layer, we enhance, thinking it'll help us feel more visible. But ironically, it can do the opposite. Thick, exaggerated lashes often dim what's most powerful about a woman, her expression. I say this with love and lived experience. When I was 62, I went through a phase of buying every lash-enhancing product I could find. Serums, falsies, even those magnetic strips. One night, after dinner with my son and his fiancée, I caught my reflection and saw someone who looked a little lost behind all the effort. That night, I washed it all off. My eyes looked smaller, but softer, kinder, more like me. There's nothing wrong with wanting definition, but we deserve solutions that breathe with us, not sit on top of us. A good mascara lifted gently from the roots, or a lightweight lash set that adds flutter, not weight. They don't scream, "Look at me." They invite connection. That's the difference. A woman's eyes tell her story long before her words do. Let them speak clearly. As I always say, when your eyes are uncovered, your warmth walks in before you. Next, we'll move to another quiet detail that can either soften your whole face or steal the spotlight, your lips. Before that, tell me in the comments, have you ever tried something that made you feel less yourself, even though everyone else said it looked great? Have you ever smiled at yourself in the mirror and then quickly reached for a tissue to blur the edges of your lipstick? There's something delicate about the mouth. It's where we carry warmth, stories, small joys. But as we age, many of us begin to outline, define, and redraw that softness in ways that unintentionally make us feel less like ourselves. I met a woman named Rosalie at a poetry group in Charleston last fall. 72, bright red nails, sharp mind, and a lip line that walked into the room before she did. I watched her speak. Her words were gentle, full of grace, but her mouth looked loud. The contrast was striking. It wasn't that her makeup was wrong, it was that it didn't match her energy. It overpowered it. It made me think of my own face in my mid-60s when I bought a dark mauve liner because a YouTuber said it made lips look younger. I followed the contour trick, even exaggerated a bit. But at brunch, my sister looked at me and gently said, "You okay? You seem a little dressed for battle." That stung, but it woke me up because what I wanted wasn't drama. I wanted to feel seen, subtly, naturally, like myself, just a little brighter. Here's the quiet truth. When our lip line is too sharp, too dark, or paired with overly glossy shine, it doesn't say polished. It says performing. The key is choosing tones that echo what's already there. I like to look at the inside of my bottom lip for a cue, that soft, muted rose that still feels real. And instead of a thick gloss, I now keep a tinted balm in my pocket. It adds moisture, softness, and never feels like a costume. You see, at our age, beauty becomes more about presence than perfection. The lips should welcome, not distract. Frame the smile, not shout over it. One small shift can make your whole face feel calmer, more sincere, more you. As I always remind myself, the lips don't have to announce you, they just have to feel like home. Now, let's move to something equally subtle, but just as powerful. The skin beneath it all. Because what we wear on our face should reveal who we are, not replace it. And before we go on, tell me, have you ever applied something that made you look more done, but somehow feel less real? Do you ever put on foundation and then feel like your face has gone quiet, like it's hiding behind a curtain? There was a morning last winter, I remember it clearly. I was getting ready for a small gallery event in Asheville. I hadn't been out much that season, and I wanted to feel a little polished. So I pulled out a full coverage foundation I'd bought on a whim. High-end, promising, full of miracles. I applied it carefully, smoothing it into every corner. But when I looked in the mirror, I didn't see me. I saw a version of me with all the texture erased, but also the stories. At 68, I've learned this. Our faces hold more than age. They hold memory. And sometimes, when we try to paint over that, we lose the spark that makes us real. Many women I speak with feel this tug of war. The desire to even out our skin while still looking alive, fresh, not overly done. But the truth is, when foundation is too heavy, too matte, or the wrong tone, it dulls more than it defines. It becomes a mask, and masks don't let emotion through. They just sit there. What changed for me was learning to let my skin speak, not shout, not vanish, but whisper with grace. That meant testing my shade in real daylight, not department store lighting, and choosing lighter formulas that melt into the skin. Now I use less. A touch around the nose, a dab under the eyes, and I let the rest breathe. Freckles, spots, a soft line here or there, that's living, that's earned. And here's something I remind my friends often. Coverage without connection leaves us looking finished, but not felt. So if you ever feel like your makeup is making you disappear, not glow, it might be time to simplify. Not to give up, but to come home to your features. Use color, like a bit of rose on the cheeks, to add dimension, not more base. Because radiant skin isn't about being flawless. It's about feeling comfortable in your own texture. Next, let's turn to the part of the face that speaks before we say a word, our brows. They shape our gaze, but sometimes they take over the whole story, and I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever found yourself blending more to feel seen, only to feel strangely invisible instead? Have you ever seen a photo of yourself and thought, why do I look so stern? But you weren't feeling that way at all? It happened to my friend Jean last Thanksgiving. We were at her daughter's home in Portland. Casual, cozy, lots of flannel and cranberry pie. Jean had tried a new brow gel she saw on Instagram. Says it'll lift and hold all day, she told me proudly. And it did hold. A little too well. In the family photos, her brows sat like two bold arrows, perfectly arched, but frozen. She looked almost surprised in every shot, even while laughing. Eyebrows are storytellers. They move with our emotions. A soft furrow when we're listening. A lift when we're amused. A gentle pinch when we're worried. But when they're overly sculpted, too laminated, drawn too sharply, or the wrong tone, they stop expressing. They start performing. Especially as we age, many of us start to lose definition in the face. It's tempting to compensate with stronger brows, but stronger doesn't always mean harder. The key is harmony, choosing a brow pencil or powder that echoes the softness of our hair, 1 or 2 shades lighter if you're brunette, a touch deeper if you've gone silver, using gentle strokes instead of sharp lines. Letting the brows follow the natural growth, not fight against it. I used to think my thinning brows needed to be fixed, but now I just guide them. I tint them every few weeks, brush them upward, and stop there. And you know what? My face feels like me again. Not a character, not an impression. Because when your brows move with your face, not instead of it, that's where grace lives. I often say, elegance doesn't freeze the face, it frees it. Up next, we'll shift from the face to the fingertips, another quiet detail that says so much more than we realize. But before we go, I'd love to ask, have your brows ever made you feel like you were wearing someone else's expression? What helped you find your own again? Do your hands ever tell a different story than your heart? Last weekend, at the little bookshop cafe down the street, I bumped into Marie. She's 72, retired nurse, warm eyes, always humming something under her breath. She reached out to pass me my chai latte, and I couldn't help but notice her nails. Long, pointy, covered in chrome shimmer, and tiny butterflies. She caught my glance and laughed. My granddaughter took me to her nail tech, said I needed to update my vibe. But her smile faded as she added, I feel like I'm playing dress up in someone else's hands. Hands say a lot about us. They hold, wave, write, pour, and comfort. But when our nails shout louder than we speak, they can distract from everything else. And sometimes they even betray the very grace we hope to carry. It's a quiet shift, really. From bold shapes and neon colors to soft neutrals, gentle pinks, or even a clean buffed nail. Rounded or oval shapes that mirror the curve of your fingers. These small, thoughtful choices don't just look refined, they feel aligned. Because they don't try to impress, they simply express. I remember when I started trimming my nails shorter again, just neat, clear polish. My daughter said, Mom, your hands look like you. And I realized that was all I ever wanted. Not trendy, just true. There's nothing wrong with creativity or color, but elegance in our age is less about sparkle, more about stillness. When your nails whisper instead of shout, people see the woman, not the manicure. I like to say, the hands we've lived with for decades deserve to feel dignified, not disguised. And now, let's talk about something you can't see, but people always notice. Your scent. Tell me, what do your hands say about you lately? And do they feel like yours? Have you ever hugged someone and their perfume stayed long after the warmth of the hug had faded. Just last month, I was at a garden brunch for a neighbor's 70th birthday. Everyone wore linen and pastels, laughter drifting through the air like birdsong. As I reached for a scone, a woman passed by me. Her perfume arrived before she did. Thick vanilla, cotton candy, a sweet swirl that hung in the air like fog. She sat beside me, lovely woman, but I found myself quietly inching away. Not because of her words or smile, but because the scent left no room to breathe. Perfume should invite, not announce. The most elegant women I've known never left a trail. Instead, you'd catch the gentlest hint of something when they leaned in to say your name. Their scent lived in the quiet space between gestures, not in the whole room. When I turned 60, I gave away half my perfume bottles. Most of them were gifts or impulse buys, floral explosions, too sugary, too loud. I kept only 3: a soft jasmine with a powdery finish, a woody musk that feels like an old bookshop, and one clean scent that smells like warm skin and soap. Now, I spray once on my wrist, tap it behind my ear, and walk through the air. Never directly on my clothes. It's subtle. But I've had more people lean in and say, "You smell like someone I want to remember." Here's the truth. When we overdo fragrance, it can send a message we didn't mean to. I'm trying hard to be noticed. But when we wear just enough to let others come closer, it says something far more powerful. I'm comfortable enough to be still, to be real. I once read, "The right scent doesn't speak louder than you, it breathes with you." And I carry that with me every time I get dressed. Let's now move from the invisible to the visible again. Because sometimes what dulls our beauty isn't what we add, but what we forget to care for. Do you still wear perfume the way you did in your 30s, or has your scent grown up with you? There's something quietly disappointing about realizing a piece you once loved now leaves a mark, not on your heart, but on your skin. I remember standing in line at my local co-op market when the woman in front of me reached out to pay. Her hands were elegant, but the ring, once gold-toned, had faded into a brassy color, and her finger bore a faint green shadow beneath it. She caught me noticing, smiled softly, and said, "Well, it looked nice for a while." There was something so honest in her voice, and also something a little resigned. The truth is, as we grow older, we become more attuned to the quiet details. Not to impress, but to feel like ourselves. And when jewelry turns, peels, or stains, no matter how small, it pulls us out of that feeling of being gently held by our own presence. But here's the good news. We don't need drawers full of diamonds. What we need are pieces that last, that feel personal, and that never ask us to trade beauty for discomfort. Stainless steel, gold-filled, or even plated pieces from thoughtful brands can give us that quiet glow, without the green surprises. For me, it's become a ritual. Wiping down earrings after a dinner out, choosing a single delicate bracelet instead of a stack, saying goodbye to that necklace that never quite sat right on my collarbone. It's not about being perfect. It's about feeling at ease. Because when our jewelry glows, it doesn't demand attention. It gives it. It frames our faces, our gestures, our words with softness. One day, my granddaughter asked why I always wear the same pair of pearl earrings. I told her, because they never shout and they've never failed me. That's what I believe jewelry should do. Support you in silence. Make you feel quietly put together. Never take more than it gives. When something shines gently instead of loudly, it makes room for you to shine. Now, let's shift our focus to something even smaller, but no less telling: the condition of our fabrics. Because sometimes it's not the piece that's wrong, it's the care, or lack of it, that tells a different story. Do you have a piece of jewelry that holds a quiet meaning for you no matter its cost? Have you ever pulled on an old sweater because it felt familiar, only to glance in the mirror and feel faded? We all have those pieces. The cozy cardigan that's lost its shape, the once black pants now dulled into a charcoal gray, clothes that once hugged our bodies and spirits, but now seem to droop with the weight of memory. Last month, I was at a local library talk in Charleston. A woman, maybe 65, with the softest gray curls and the kindest eyes, stood up to ask a question. Her blouse was fraying slightly at the collar, and there were tiny pills dotting the sleeves. Nothing dramatic, but enough that, for a moment, it distracted from her lovely presence. Afterward, we spoke. She said she hadn't bought new clothes in years. "I don't go anywhere special," she shrugged. But here's what I reminded her. You are somewhere special. Right here. Right now. The problem isn't old clothes, it's what worn-out clothes quietly suggest. That maybe we've stopped seeing ourselves. That maybe, just maybe, we think we no longer deserve to look cared for. But the truth is, maintaining what we already own is a quiet act of self-respect. A lint roller at the door, a gentle fabric shaver for pilled knits, a steamer instead of another run through the dryer. These are small rituals, but they change everything. When our clothes look alive, so do we. For me, it's my navy wool coat. Bought it back in 1992. Still wear it every winter. But I've replaced the lining, polished the buttons, and keep it hung just right. It's not about newness, it's about intention. And that coat, it still walks with pride beside me, because what we wear whispers messages, whether we mean it or not. And I want mine to say, she still shows up for herself. And so before you reach for that stretched out tee or that sweater full of memory but no more shape, ask what story it's really telling. Sometimes, elevating your appearance doesn't mean buying something new. It means giving what you have a second chance to shine. Next, let's talk about something many of us grew up learning to perfect: our hair. But what if less done could actually mean more grace? What's one old item in your closet you still love, but know it needs a little care? Have you ever stood in front of your closet, makeup bag in hand, and whispered, "I just want to feel like me again"? Not younger, not trendier, just me, but a version of me that looks quietly pulled together, that walks into a room without apology, that feels at peace in her own skin. The small choices we talked about: lighter lashes, softer lips, well-cared-for clothes, clean brows, and understated scent aren't rules. They're reminders that we don't need to be louder to be seen. We don't need glitter to glow. I once visited a dear friend in Maine, Eleanor, who had just turned 70. We sat on her porch in worn-in wicker chairs, tea between us. She told me, "I stopped coloring my hair last year. I thought I'd feel invisible. But I've never felt more real." And that stayed with me. Because it's not about trying to fix yourself. It's about removing the noise that never belonged to you in the first place. The overdrawn lines, the sticky gloss, the itchy rhinestones, the things that were meant to impress, but only left you tired. Now, I'm not saying you need to throw it all out. I'm saying pause. Feel what aligns. Choose the mascara that lets your eyes breathe. The lip that looks like it belongs to your smile. The necklace that warms your collarbone without shouting. As for me, I still wear my mother's pearl studs on quiet days. I still steam my black wrap dress every time I wear it, even if it's just for lunch with my sister. Not for anyone else, but for the woman I see in the mirror. Because elegance isn't about effort, it's about ease. And ease, my friend, is the most radiant thing you can wear. So before you buy another lipstick or another bottle of perfume, ask yourself not, will this impress, but will this let the real me come forward? Because the real you is unforgettable. A quiet woman in her truth is never invisible. Thank you for sharing these few minutes with me. If this felt like a warm cup of tea for your soul, I'd love to have you join me again. You can subscribe or just drop a comment. I always read them. And now I'd love to hear from you. What small change in your daily routine has helped you feel more aligned with who you are today?